السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، مساء الخير جميعا. أهلا بكم في هذه الحلقة الخاصة من برنامج نيوكاسل مع وليد، مع المحلل الإنجليزي فيليب. من مدينة نيوكاسل، لكن حاليا هو مقيم في لندن. طبعا فيليب يحب أو يهوى كثير التحليل والتكتيك، تحليل التكتيكات والمدربين، ولقيناها فرصة نتكلم معاه ونشوف، ناخذ رأي جديد. أول مرة أنا طبعا استضيف فيليب، وراح يعطينا وراح يحكي لنا الحين عن نفسه في هذه الحلقة. راح نتكلم عن مباراة نيوكاسل ومانشستر سيتي بكرة إن شاء الله 8:30 توقيت السعودية، وراح نتكلم عن العديد من الأمور. لكن حلقتنا الرئيسية بتكون أكثر شيء عن التكتيكات. بداية قبل ما نروح للفيلم، بداية لا تنسون الاشتراك في قناة نيوكاسل مع وليد على وسائل التواصل. أيضا لا تنسون الانضمام لجروب الواتساب اللي عندنا تقريبا 700 عضو في أكثر من 30 جروب متخصص. وأيضا نقدم خدمة التذاكر للي حاب يحضر أي مباراة حاب يحضرها. خصوصا الآن عندنا راح تصلنا الليلة إن شاء الله تذاكر النهائي السوبر الإسباني بين ريال مدريد وبرشلونة. طبعا الرقم موجود في الواتس، وراح نحكي او راح نذكره يعني في البايو، ايضا في تويتر، والبانر هنا في البرنامج. ايضا عندنا تذاكر برضو السوبر الايطالي الويكند القادم ان شاء الله، وايضا تذاكر نيوكاسل فولهام في كاس الاتحاد. وبرضو طبعا اللي حاب، اصدقائنا في قطر واخواننا في قطر اللي طبعا يشهدون افتتاح كاس اسيا، حاولنا نقول كاس العالم قطر، برضو نقدر نساعدهم في موضوع التذاكر. وإن شاء الله تعاد الأمجاد السعودية والآسيوية ونحصل على البطولة. طبعا حصلنا عليها عام 96، أذكر أنا وقتها كنت في خامس ابتدائي، ولي قصة طريفة في البطولة ممكن أحكيها إن شاء الله في وقت لاحق. نعرفكم اليوم بصديقنا فيليب، راح يحكي لنا عن نفسه. طبعا فيليب عنده قناة جميلة جدا، وتقريبا هو لسه بادي من شهرين. عنده قناة اسمها تون تاكتكس، واللي حاب يعني يدخل ويشوف التكتيكات والتحليلات يشترك في قناته في اليوتيوب. قناة جميلة، عنده كثير من الحلقات الشيقة صراحة، وأنا عجبني كثير في تحليله الفني. وراح نتكلم الكثير اليوم، يحكي لنا عن جوارديولا وعن إيدي هاو بكرة. Welcome, Philip, for first time in Newcastle with وليد.
Thank you so much for the invite. I was saying to you earlier that I used to watch you a lot on previous podcasts and stuff like that. So for me, yes, I feel like the honor is mine. I feel like I'm talking to, like I said, someone I've watched for a long time. So real privilege to be here and to be able to talk to your audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you too for coming, Philip. Usually this is not my place, not my studio. I look like in weird place, but this is a pizza restaurant. By coincidence, I was here because we are stuck with the time. But everything is fine here. The internet is okay. So, Philip, what you can tell us to the Saudi fans, especially, and also Newcastle fans in the tune, what you can tell us about yourself and where we can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Walid said, my name is Philip. I've been supporting Newcastle United for nearly 30 years now, I think, if I get my maths right. I live in London, so you might think, how does a guy from London support Newcastle United? Because it's in Newcastle, obviously. I wasn't originally born in London. I was born in Europe. I was born in Russia. And so when I came into the UK, I came into London. I flicked on the TV and Newcastle United were the first team I saw play. So I said, they look good. And then I think literally the next week I watched a second game with them when they were playing Monaco, and Thierry Henry used to play for Monaco at the time. I think it was in the Champions League, and Newcastle lost that game, and I wept, I cried, and so I said to myself, you can't cry over a team and then support somebody else. And so Newcastle United have been my team ever since, from Bobby Robson and Champions League days to the relegation days and everything else to now, Steve Bruce and now the takeover. And so I feel like I don't know what, all I need to experience now is us lifting the Champions League and the Premier League, and I can say I've seen it all in football. So yeah, and yes, and yeah, you can find me. I've been a content creator for football for about 2 months now, only 2 months, and you can find me on Twitter, or X as you call it now, as Team Tactics TV. You can search for me also on YouTube, on Team Tactics TV as well, on Instagram, and on TikTok. So I'm on all these places, and yeah, I'm sure my details will be in the description as well. So yeah, if you guys want to get in contact with me or subscribe, please do so. Everybody's welcome.
That's quite a story you tell us, Philip. Really interested. What make you interested in tactics? Are you planning like to be a coach, or this is just a hobby?
Oh, it's a hobby. I just it didn't always start off like I enjoyed the game, and I mentioned to you that especially with the kind of the days when Steve Bruce is in charge, I wasn't so much looking at tactics. I was just hoping and praying, and everything was emotion. My father-in-law would tell you that every time I watched the Newcastle game, I'd have to, after the game finishes, I'd have to leave the house and walk the streets for 20 minutes and just to cool off, just to calm down. But now, as things have changed, and I used to ignore the other football. I used to ignore a lot of the top six, the Champions League football, because whenever I watched it, I got jealous. I was like, but why can't my team play like this? Why can't we play front foot football? Why can't we pass? Why can't we, not be scared? And so I used to get jealous too much to watch it. But now things have changed dramatically, and so my attention, I feel like I've returned to my love of football and seeing tactics and seeing how coaches play. But one of my real specialisms, or one of my real likes, is leadership, around leadership. So I'm very keen on looking at managers and understanding how leadership works. I think there's a famous quote by a gentleman called John Maxwell who says that everything rises and falls on leadership, and so I think a team is the reflection of their manager, and so I look out for that a lot, and so that's kind of how the name for my content, Toon Tactics TV, was birthed. Is Toon Tactics TV. We're looking at all those type of things and trying to understand where the team is going.
For me, I used to coach a while, and the most thing I believe any coach is to make a one tactic, or a plan for a goal, or how to play, and the team do it and score a goal. This is the most thing a coach or become happy. So what do you think is the best thing for you into tactics?
For
coach, and study those tactics, enjoying these tactics.
Do you know, I think it depends on two things, really. There's two things that they must have. And I think the most important one of those two things, so there's mentality, and then there's tactics. So mentality is the very first thing, because it doesn't matter how good your tactics are, how good your planning is, how good your technique is, how far you can dribble, and all these other things and all these qualities that you have. If you don't have the mentality, as we can see with some of our rival teams, if we can see Chelsea, for instance, who spent 1 billion on a whole squad. But as soon as they go down to a championship team like Middlesbrough, if anybody's watched, they can't get it in themselves to win. So they're one of the best coaches in the world. They've got all the tactics in the world, but they don't have the mentality. I'll tell you one quick story before I finish. I don't know if anybody saw, there was a clip of Vinicius Jr. Vinicius Jr., the one that plays for Real Madrid. Now, we can all agree that Vinicius Jr. is a world-class player. Like, he's a certified world-class player. So Vinicius Jr. decides that he wants a tattoo. You know, a tattoo. He wants a tattoo all across his, on the whole of his back. You know, like a tattoo. What a tattoo is, like a whole picture.
Yeah, yes.
Permanent in the whole of his back, not just his arm, but the whole of his back. So he travels somewhere for 6 hours to go get this tattoo. And to get the tattoo, it takes 8 hours to complete, right? So what you're thinking, the man traveled all this time to get this tattoo and spent all that time to get a tattoo. What was the tattoo? And when he turns around on his back, you can see a picture of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Pele, all these guys. So he's got this picture of all these incredible sports athletes. But he's got one word, one big word that's etched across all of them. Do you know what that one word is? I tell you what, it's not dribbling, it's not tactics, it's not planning, it's mentality. Mentality. So the best one of our best world-class players in the world, he himself understands that it's not his dribbling or his quality or his first touch, which are important. You can't be a footballer if you don't have these things. But to bring all these things together, to bring all these things as one, in one thing that makes him the complete footballer, it's mentality. So I think mentality is important.
Well, Philip, he actually, Vinicius Junior, he did something interesting last night.
Right.
He play in Riyadh now in Super Copa. He thanks the fan in his Instagram in Arabic language. We didn't remember any player do this before. So he really. So that's speaking of mentality, really.
Absolutely, because he's thinking of you. He's thinking of others before he's thinking of
yes,
what he's
he
saying.
can basically thanks the fans in English or in Portuguese, but he did it very well in Arabic.
Wow.
Of course, he asked someone, but this is nice from him. Yeah.
That he tried. Exactly. That's exactly it. So mentality is one, and obviously everything in terms of a leader, and there's some real other qualities as well. Absolutely.
We'll come to the mentality of Eddie Howe and Guardiola later.
Yes.
But before I know, if we go to the tactics of the game tomorrow, we're not gonna finish. So couple of subjects we'd like to discuss it before going into the tactics.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about what do you think if we talk about transfer window, and what the player do you think from these, like Calvin Phillips, Jordan Henderson, or anyone else? Because we hear that Hayden maybe will be this player again. So what do you think about what we need in this transfer window? And also if you have a comment on Darren Ellis' huge story last night.
Yeah, well, first of all, we definitely don't want Jordan Henderson, and we don't want Isaac Hayden. I think their time is up. But in terms of I think what we need is, in an ideal world, what we'd like is obviously another centre midfielder, especially of the ilk of a Calvin Phillips. Is not too far from Bruno, not stylistically, but what they do is they play really, really well with their back to goal. Now, when we say back to goal, obviously you know that you can play back to goal in any area of the pitch. It's how you receive the ball with your back to the opposition goal, and how you can turn, be press resistant, and move the ball. So both Calvin Phillips and Bruno are really good at that. The problem is that Bruno doesn't really want to do that too often. He doesn't want to be a number 6. He wants to play further up the pitch, and you can see why. He's got the through pass, he's got the progressive pass, and he's got an eye to be forward. And he would like to, and he doesn't really, he's got many qualities, but running at speed is not one of them. And his recovery pace when we're being attacked and we have to run back isn't the greatest. Whereas Calvin Phillips is much better at that, and he relishes that role. He played that role when he was with Leeds United. So he'd often be between, when they're collecting the ball from the goalkeeper, he'll be in between the two centre-backs, and he'll be in between collecting the ball and spreading the play. He's also got a really, really good long ball as well. So he can play it long ball, he can play it short, as well as all the other athletic qualities in terms of tackling and getting stuck in. And so Eddie Howe loves that. And obviously his overall attitude, he's got a good character. Granted, he hasn't played for regularly for a very long time, but his character and his attitude has always been one of the things that has been highlighted by Guardiola and others. And Eddie Howe loves those type of things. So
Philip, sorry to interrupt, but why do you think Calvin didn't fit with Guardiola tactics and the plans?
What I suspect is, I think maybe the if you look at Rodri, what people don't understand, what we all know is that what makes Rodri so special is that all those things I've mentioned, he can do. So he is press resistant. He can pass forward. He can carry the ball. He can do long ball, short ball. He is the point of everything. He can run back. He's huge. He's a huge, huge man. He's got the character to really pull the team towards him as well. So he's very press resistant up the field, behind the field. He dictates their play. Calvin Phillips, for all his talents, hasn't got that same ability. Not many people in the world have. That's why someone like Rodri is so special. Usually, For instance, in our team, you need 2 or 3 midfielders who have those characteristics. So, for instance, Bruno is press resistant and come past the ball, but he's not that good at running back. And is not overly, he's physical, but he's not as strong as, for instance, Joe Linton, who is athletic, who can run back, and who can dominate the play with his physicality. However, he also isn't as good, for instance, maybe on the ball, not on the ball, but in terms of progressive passing. And Bruno and Sean Longstaff, to some extent, are. So you need all those 3 guys to make the midfield work, to make the midfield physical, mobile, progressive, passing forward. Whereas Rodri is all those things in one. Calvin Phillips isn't all those things in one. He has those qualities, but not to that level. And so I think the fact that you got Rodri there, it just made it impossible for Calvin Phillips to get into the squad. So I think maybe that's why I got. And Guardiola said he would love to use him, but when you've got Rodri, you can't put Rodri on the bench.
Yes, and also he preferred Kovacic as well as a second player next to Rodri.
He does.
That's an interesting answer, Philip. But so why he bring Phillips in first place? I think I remember it was 50 million pounds.
He was 50 million. So what makes Newcastle, in terms of our play and what we do, in terms of our press especially, so formidable?
No, I mean why Guardiola? Sorry, why Guardiola buy him in first place?
I think Guardiola was hoping that he could be someone that could challenge and provide competition for Rodri, that he could also step in if Rodri was suspended or injured. He wanted competition for Rodri, but the fact is that he didn't end up being any competition for Rodri, and that was never going to happen for him, essentially. And so he also doesn't fully. Man City are just not the same without Rodri, because Calvin Phillips hasn't got the same personality, especially in the front, more forward areas, as a Rodri. The play breaks down. And so we've seen it, for instance, this season when Rodri, I think, was injured or suspended for 3 games, and Man City didn't win a game. They lost to Wolves. I forgot who else they lost to, and I think it was Aston Villa, and there was no Rodri. So it just shows you how important he is, and the fact why Phillips couldn't carry the team in the same way. And I think maybe that's what Guardiola was hoping for from him.
Brilliant stuff, Philip. Philip will continue later in details about tactics of the game tomorrow. I would expect from Eddie. But I would like to ask about what do you think? This is like 2 questions in same 2-part question. We hear Darren Ellis yesterday that there is no much money because of the financial fair play, and but he said we will have some business in January, but it's like kind of limited. So what do you think now we need to go through the season, to save the season? Is Calvin Phillips just enough, or do you think we need someone else with Calvin Phillips? So would like to opinion of Darren Ellis speak about financial fair play. It was very clear, all details, and also the second part, which is what we need. Obviously, we will have Calvin Phillips. Who else the team needs now?
Those are brilliant questions. First of all, on Darren Eales, and in the wider context, just in any transfer window, it would be foolish for any football club to say, hey, especially at Newcastle, to say, hey, we've got all this money and we're ready to spend it. Because what's going to happen is the selling clubs will say, oh, you've got lots of money. Then that £50 million player is all of a sudden £30 million. That £30 million player is now £60 million. When we bought Anthony Gordon last season in the winter transfer window, Everton were trying to sell him to us for 60 million, and we got it down to 45. And so those are the kind of pressures that Newcastle are dealing with. We can't even loan players. When we try to loan Lingard from Man United, if people remember, for 6 months we wanted Lingard, and Man United wanted to charge us £12 million to loan him. That's insane amount of money for a loan. So it just shows you that what situation that Newcastle are on, especially with the profile of our owners. We have the richest owners in the Premier League, full stop, even with all the other owners combined. And they don't have the luxury of saying to people, they can't fool people and say, we have no money as owners. It's simply not true. What we do have is FFP. There is a real element and truth of FFP. We can't spend whatever we want. You can see that from Everton. You can see that from all the other clubs that are now suffering in terms of being sanctioned. The FFP and the PSR is real. And so there is an element of truth in that. However, Newcastle, I think, do have money to spend. They do this every transfer window. They say they don't have it. They're not going to spend that much money. I think it was last summer. They said, "Oh, that's it. We're going into the season. We're not going to spend any money." Then Callum Wilson got a hamstring injury before the season started, and what happened? We bought Isak for 70 million. Again, the winter that went, we said we're not going to buy anyone. We end up buying Gordon for 45 million. So all these things, so they do have money, but they don't want to be shouting that they want to be money. The only team who can't pretend they don't have money is Chelsea, because Chelsea have shown that they're willing to spend £1 billion and they're paying for it now. You hear Man United fans bemoaning that because their club has failed to negotiate skillfully all these years, they've ended up paying. They initially were going to pay 40 million for Anthony, and they ended up paying 85 million for him. That's absolutely poor. And Newcastle can't afford to be in that position. We still got to bring our revenue up. Darren Eales was telling the truth that, yes, the season before we had £170 million revenue. This season is £230 million. But for instance, if you compare us to Tottenham, who are probably the lowest team out of the top 6 clubs in Premier League, their income was 430 million. So we've still got a way to go. And the good thing is that there's room to do that. So there is an element of truth in that. And Newcastle have to be careful. I wager, and this is not me being a financial expert or anything, but I think Newcastle have anywhere between 40 to 60 million pounds to spend in this transfer window. Now, that doesn't mean in terms of one player, because we know that with transfers, it's almost what that means is a different thing. So they're usually paid in installments, and there's an upfront fee. If I buy a car from you, وليد, and I say, you sell me a car for £2,000, for instance. You want to sell a car, usually you as customers we have to pay the full 2,000. But sometimes, most of the time, we say installments. I've got £200 for you now, and that's how it works. And so we can still buy a couple of players of £60 million and pay the upfront cost, and that's how it would work. So that 60 million is what I think Newcastle have, but they don't want to be shouting from the rooftops that they've got 60 million pounds and things like that. That's my take on it. That's what I think. I think Simon Jordan, for anybody knows who Simon Jordan is on Talk Sport, is he's a former Crystal Palace owner, was saying the same thing, that Newcastle have money. You have to remember that we also got Champions League money. We've got the Adidas sponsorship. We've got further income and revenues. So all that money is there for Newcastle to spend. So I think that's why Newcastle went out to do that, and to kind of, that message wasn't just for the fans, what Darren Eales was saying, to temper expectations, but it was also for football agents and for selling clubs.
Yes,
exactly. It's just, to go public and say, hey, we haven't.
Don't increase the prices. That's all what we have.
Exactly. Again, going back to the selling car analogy, if I come to you and I say to you, وليد, I know you're selling, I've got 10 billion pounds, and I know you're selling a car for 2,000, but I want to buy it for 1,500. What's the first thing you're going to say to me? You're going to say, Philip, you've got 10 billion pounds. What's 500 pounds to pay for a car to you? So even if I've got 10 billion pounds, I say, وليد, man, I've got £1,000 in right now on me. Can you do me? So that's what that message was to me.
Really great explanation behind between the lines.
Yes,
and
sir.
Also it was like even he said, Calvin Phillips, we will pay him, if we buy him, it's going to be a loan, not cash. So clear, so obvious, so detailed.
And we can't even, Eddie Howe was like, we don't have any friends in the Premier League. No one's going to loan players. No one's going to.
Yes, and also been trying to sell Isaac and by 1 billion.
Yeah. We have to sell our best.
It was really smart article. And maybe 10th of January, but it's not too late. We still have time. So this is interesting. So Calvin Phillips, what if we have one more player to add to the squad? what do you think? Which player or which position will help us?
Do you know, I'm stuck between, and I change my mind every day on this. It's between two positions. One is either a forward, so who can play forward, that's someone, an attacker who can play across the front three, maybe mainly right wing, especially. But
do you mean number 10 position or?
So it can be number 10 or number 8. So
number 8.
You know, where Miggy plays.
Okay, a right winger.
Right winger. So yeah, a right winger who can play who can also play where Isak plays and where Gordon plays. So that kind of play, because we like utility players. We don't like specialist players too much. So someone in that position, an upgrade on Miggy, someone to help us to convert those chances, and a real talented inside forward. But the other one I'm thinking of, I'm stuck between is the right centre back. So an upgrade for Cher. And there's a number of players that I've heard, we've kind of heard on social media that we're looking at. For instance, Malik Thau from AC Milan, young player there, right centre back, big, tall, athletic, intelligent, pace. So because we play so high up as a team, we like to press forward. We need someone with athleticism to be able to have that recovery place and come back. It's why you see, for instance, if you see whether it's Man City, but especially Arsenal, because Arsenal got Gabriel Saliba and Saliba and Gabriel, both with a lot of pace, both very athletic. You can see that the other players are very confident to push up, because even if they get a ball over the top, they know those guys are big, strong, and fast enough to do that. Now, I know Fabian Schär has been going well, but he's not as fast. He's not as strong as he's strong, but he's not as big as Saliba is. And if you can get a big athletic player next to Sven Botman, you're going to see a whole new total Newcastle there.
What's his name again?
Who? Oh, Fabian Schär.
The defender from Milan.
Oh, Malik Thau.
Do you expect any future deal with Milan after what happened with Tonali?
Do you know? Maybe not. Maybe they'll take a closer look at his personal history. But but look.
Okay, follow me once. Shame on me.
Yeah, very true. Very, very, very true. There's other right centre backs they're looking at as well. But I think that's where I'm stuck between. I think that's what they're looking for, real upgrades in those positions.
We have a lot of questions regarding tactics, so we'll give the fans and our subscribers to get the benefit of your answers, Philip. And after this question, we'll go to the main topic, which is the game tomorrow.
Okay.
So let's. This is our friend Alan. Hello, Alan. Okay. How we have to play the VS City? Who you think have to play in the midfield? Okay, let's start with Alan. Question.
Do you want me to go, or do you want to start, وليد?
Yeah, sure. Go on.
Yeah, so I think we've got very limited choices in terms of who could play in the midfield. I think you'll probably be very likely to be Sean Longstaff, Bruno, and Lewis Miley. Lewis Miley on the right midfield, Sean Longstaff on the left midfield, and Bruno in the centre.
But Miley injured, I believe.
No, Joe Linton. Joe Linton's injured.
Also Miley.
No way. I didn't hear that. I hope it's not. You're crushing my feelings here. I was just like, I was just on social media about an hour ago. All I saw was Joe Linton. Is Miley injured as well? I hope not.
Okay.
I'll double check it. But assuming that he's fit, it'll be Miley. And I don't know. Obviously, Joe Linton's off for 6 weeks as well. And injuries have been absolutely crippling for us. In terms of play, so we've played obviously Man City twice this season. We won one and we lost one. Obviously, and you can pick out a lot of things from that. I think especially the first game in terms of when we played them in the League Cup, when we beat them 1-0 at St James's Park, and we had Paul Dummett and Lascelles as our centre backs, which was an incredible game, and we still won. So that was the second game, but the first game was away to Man City. And if the guys here remember, is that I think Eddie Howe paid a little bit too much respect to Man City. You have to respect them, but there's also something that when you say you give too much respect, and we became very reactive. He became very worried because Guardiola spread the play. He had Kyle Walker and Ake pushing up on the wings, which made Gordon and I think it was Miggy on the right at the time they were very reactive towards them, and they were very worried that those guys will come around them. And so instead of focusing on the attack, they were focusing on defending too much. And then what else happened is that he pushed up his two centre-backs, Guardiola, and he went into the midfield. So all of a sudden, Tonali, Bruno and Joe Linton were having to react to not just the midfield of Foden and Alvarez, but they were also worried about their centre-backs coming into the team. So we got over-flooded. And so we became very, very reactive. And when we did finally get the ball, for instance, we were very wasteful for it. And I think we were quite tired. And so we paid them a little bit too much respect. And eventually we lost by that 1-0. I think what happened is in the League Cup game, Eddie Howe made up his mind very, very quickly to defend the first half and see if they can ride it out. And they did that very well. It was 0-0. By the second half, for 15 minutes, for the guys who remember the game, for 15 minutes, Newcastle were absolutely pressed and rushed at Man City. And that's when Isak got the goal and we won 1-0. And then for the rest of the 25, 35 minutes, Newcastle defended really well. So they had a lot of conviction. Whereas in the first game, we were somewhere in the middle. We were very reactive. We didn't know what to do. In the second game, we knew exactly what our game plan was, which was to defend and to counter press. And then in the second half, for 10, 15 minutes, we're going to go at Man City, and it worked. He put on Gordon and he put on Bruno, and he put on Gordon, he put on Isak, and it changed the game. Now for this third game, for the game that's coming up now, I think Eddie Howe would have learned from the past, which is, yes, Man City are Man City. They're treble winners. They're an exceptional team. They're the best team in the world. But we can't give them too much respect. We have to know what we're doing. I think Newcastle will attack. I think the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes is very, very important for the team. And it will set the tone for how Newcastle go about the game. I think initially Newcastle will definitely attack and press. And they will risk it. If Kyle Walker and whoever else on the left side for Man City decide to press up, I think they will leave it to Dan Burn and Kieran Trippier to do the man-to-man marking, with Miley and Longstaff doing their best to provide that cover. But a lot of the attack, Gordon, Isak, and Miggy to attack and to press. It's going to be vital, because you can't let City get into a rhythm and a flow too quickly. Otherwise, the game can be done within the first 30 seconds if you're not careful. So I think that's what Newcastle will start to do. But then they'll also choose times, phases in the game to defend and to just to be compact as possible and not allow City to go through them. I don't think they'll be in the middle. I don't think they'll be in the middle as a form, as a team. Otherwise, they'll just get caught out and they'll get past, and they'll get Man City will just stay on the ball and they'll just pass Newcastle to death. So I think Eddie Howe will use home advantage and he'll try to press where he can, but he also defend compactly where they can. The good thing is, obviously, I'm sure you've seen the Sunderland game. We looked a lot more. We looked like we had a lot more energy. We got the intensity back into our game, and so that was really good to see. And I think we're going to see that a lot more in this game as well.
Brilliant, Philip. Asking generally, what's Newcastle tactics now? Is it high press or direct play or position?
Here's an answer: is all those things. What what Eddie Howe's mastered is that, look, Newcastle's key strength is they play as a team. They're an exceptional team. They press together, they defend together, and they can do those things exceptionally well. We don't have, apart from maybe one or two players who are heading in this direction, but we don't have individually brilliant players. Even we don't have a Rodri or a De Bruyne, for instance. We don't have those players by themselves. But as a team, as a unit, this is why, for instance, maybe rival fans will look at Sean Longstaff and look at Dan Burn and say, those guys will never make it into our team. And to an extent, they're right. But for us, for our team and for our system, they work brilliantly. what Eddie Howe's done very, very well is been able to create a team that's able to play front foot football, and when they need to, also become very compact and defend. And they can also play directly when they can. They need certain players to do that very well. And so, your question, sir? You're right on all these things. We can play very direct. We can counter press, and we also press. In the main thing is that we are a front foot pressing team, but with a lot of intelligence about how we do it. And so that's the long and short answer to that. But Bruno is very, very, and this is why we suffered for the last 9 games. You would have heard the phrase that intensity is our identity. So with Bruno brings it. We're talking about Calvin Phillips. This is why Calvin Phillips is very important, because he's going to do this role now. What Bruno does, he also takes the ball from our centre backs, from Fabian Schär and Botman. So Fabian and Schär and Botman, because they're really good on the ball, they can also pass the ball directly themselves into the midfield and bypass Bruno and get it directly to our wingers. However, most of the time when we want to play a little bit, when we want to have a little bit more build-up play, Bruno will come to collect the ball. He'll turn around and he will press. So if you watch the game, any game with Newcastle United, where Bruno is where you see the press. If you see Bruno beyond the halfway line, for instance, we're pressing. When you see Bruno next to the further back, we're all further back as well. Now, where we've been caught out is, especially against the likes of Nottingham Forest and those teams, there is because we lacked energy, physical and mental energy. When Bruno presses up, there's been a big gap between our midfield and our centre backs. And teams have just risked it and put players in between those gaps and just played directly into them. As we've mentioned before, the team has been tired, and Bruno hasn't got the legs to be able to chase back those players as well as a Calvin Phillips. So teams have been, Nottingham Forest, who we should have beaten, just played us off the park. They beat us on counter pressing. They made Chris Wood look like prime Van Nistelrooy. He scored a hat trick. Ordinarily that wouldn't happen. So Calvin Phillips is there to sit in between those centre backs and allow Bruno to do what Bruno likes to do, which is to be on the ball, dictating the play, not worrying too much about what's happening behind him. But also going to the question is, Calvin Phillips, like I mentioned earlier, is very good at long balls. So when we need to, we've got someone who's good in possession and can hit the ball directly to a Gordon, directly to a Miggy, directly to an Isak. So we've gone from a slow build-up play to direct football. And so that's the answer to your question.
طبعا فيليب يعني أعطاني جواب طويل وجواب قصير حول هذا السؤال، لكن كملخص بسيط يقول إنه الجواب إنه كل هذه مع بعض، هو يلعب ضغط عالي، بيلعب لعب مباشر، يلعب استحواذ، إنه الفريق يلعب كفريق كوحدة، تهاجم تدافع. وانه يقول يعني ركز على موضوع فيليبس انه يحتاج نيوكاسل حاليا لانه راح يعطي كرات طويله، لانه مجهد كثير برونو من المطلوب منه بشكل كبير، فيحتاج لاعب يضغط معاه ويعطي تمريرات طويله لجوردن، تمريرات السريعه هذه، لانه نيوكاسل عنده التحول سريع، لكن ما عنده اللاعبين اللي يعني يحتاجون اكثر من برونو. يعني اللاعبين اللي معه صراحه اللي في الوسط ما يأدون المطلوب بشكل كامل، فيحتاجون توب كلاس، يعني لاعبين كبار في الوسط. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you're going to translate. I spoke so long. If I knew he was going to do that, I would have made the answer a lot more shorter.
Don't worry. I sum it up in my head. Don't worry.
So sorry.
Just because so many questions. We can answer short question. يعني some question. Then you just like say also how many years Newcastle need to be ready?
Ready to compete for the league, I'm assuming. Yeah. I'll probably look at it in terms of transfer windows. So how many transfer windows do Newcastle need to be ready? Which is a really good question. For instance, I'll use this season as an example. I think if we didn't have the injuries that we had, even for instance, at this stage we've got 12 players out. That's too much. Even if we had half of those players, I think we'll be where Aston Villa are, which is probably third or fourth. So it lets me know that we've still got a little bit of way to go, but we're not too far. I personally think we've got 3 to 4 transfer windows, so about 18 months to 2 years before we're really, if we make the right decisions, always the right decisions is gonna matter in terms of the transfer window. I think we're about 18 months to 2 years out before we're really competing for the league.
طبعا فيليب يقول انه الاصابات لعبت دور كبير في التاخير، لكن تقريبا يحتاج 4 نوافذ انتقالات، يعني نافذه شتويه صيفيه شتويه صيفيه، يعني تقريبا 2 يقدر يصير جاهز للمنافسه على لقب الدوري الانجليزي. For me, Darren Ellis interview, unfortunately being translated into Arabic, and sometimes translation overseas lost so many meaning. I try to clear that in my accounts and my channel, but a lot of big accounts they translate that. They said that Newcastle must sell a player like Bruno or Botman as a must. But in the interview, if you remember, it wasn't a must. But he wouldn't mind to help. So he asking, is it right? Is it true that Newcastle has to sell a player for financial fair play?
No, and I think Eddie Howe, and the thing is, even you say overseas, but even the English-speaking media have been saying they must sell, which is what, and which is not true. Even so, Eddie Howe.
So English media. Sorry, I think they just want to clickbait.
Yes, and the reason they want to do that is to say, ha ha ha, Newcastle aren't so rich after all. And so that that's what they want to bring about. And so Eddie Howe was even on an interview today, and he had to kind of speak about that and say that. And look, and it's not unusual. People have to understand is that it's not unusual for the clubs to trade their players. Arsenal do it, Man City do it to a massive extent. They sell Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Sane. They do all these things all the time. It's been able to sell, but sell upwards, sell progressively. So you're selling, but you're still getting a better player. So we sold ASM, we sold Alan St-Maximin, but we've got Harvey Barnes, who's an upgrade to Alan St-Maximin. Some people might not agree, but I think he is. And so that's the key. But I don't think, and Eddie Howe said, look, he's not looking to sell his main, no one's looking to sell that. The last thing you want to sell is Isak, Botman, or Bruno, for instance. And I know that there's been a lot of news about Bruno, for instance. Ideally, Newcastle want to keep Bruno, and if they can, they will. And so that's what they will do. But in terms of in order to sell because they can't afford a player or they're breaching FFP, I don't think that's true. We've got those sponsorship deals coming through for a reason, and that's what we're doing. And they've been very, very clever. We still haven't even changed our name. For instance, we haven't even done the naming rights for the stadium. We've got all those type of sponsorship deals to go, but they're pressing those levers slowly. It's not all at once. It's all slowly and carefully and methodically. And so the problem is that I'll let you try. I was going to say the problem is that we spoke earlier about the reason why Darren Eales did that interview.
Yes.
Sometimes he was too good at, I think, selling a story. He was too good at it, that he's got people panicking. Yeah. So that was what I would say.
طبعا للأسف أنا كنت أقول فيليب إنه يعني المقالة حقت أظن كريغ هوف اللي مع دارين إليس للأسف يعني ترجمت بشكل خاطئ، لكن يبدو مو هذا اللي صار. يبدو إنه الحسابات الإنجليزية أخذت من بعض المواضيع، مع إنه الموضوع التقرير مرة واضح جدا مفصل ولغة يعني سهلة وواضحة وما في أي لخبطة. يعني مستحيل تقرأ شيء تقول لا ما فهمت شيء يقصد، واضح. لكن للأسف الحسابات الأجنبية حاولت تسوي تصنع حكايات، تصنع مواضيع رنانة وعناوين جاذبة للجمهور. إنه مثلا زي سؤالك، لا إنه لازم نيوكاسل يبيع لاعبين. هو ما قال كذا، قال إنه لو جاء لاعب ونعرض عليه مبلغ يعني ذكر حتى 1 بليون ممكن، يعني إنه هذا الشيء ممكن إنه اللاعب يعني يتم بيعه، بس ما قال إنه إحنا مضطرين للبيع. لكن للأسف الحسابات الأجنبية حاولت تملح وتسوي شوية إثارة، والحسابات حنا النقل الجماعي يلا يا حبيبي ترجم جوجل وحط بوست. لا ما يصلح يعني. لكن للأسف يعني أنا إيش أسوي؟ ما بيدي شيء إلا إني أحاول أصحح هذه الأمور. وأحسن لك إذا أنت حاب اقرأ المقالة نفسها حتى لو ترجمتها في جوجل راح تطلع لك افضل من الحسابات اللي قاعده تترجم تبحث عن شو يقولون ريتويتات ولايكات على ظهرك يعني. طيب برضو فيليب ذكر نقطة أنه أعجبتني هذه كثير، راح نكتبها في تغريدة، أنه أصلا هذه المقالة هي رسالة من النادي من دارين أليس للأندية، نشوفوا هذا وضعنا المالي، لا تتغلون علينا، ترى هذا اللي عندنا، احنا مضطرين باللعب المالي نظيف، فلا تتفلسفوا يعني، لا يعني تحاولون انكم تاخذون منا او مبالغ، تطلبون منا مبالغ عاليه، خصوصا وكلاء الاعمال على كلام فيليب. I like this question. KA says, does Eddie Howe attacking ideas is limited? Are limited
going forward? Oh, attacking going forward. Yeah, okay.
No. Is yeah, attacking going forward. Yeah, attacking forward. Eddie Howe ideas about attacking, is it limited?
It's a good question. So, because it's either that Eddie Howe's ideas are limited because obviously because he is limited, or is it because the players that he has limits what he can do? And that's part of the difficulty in knowing. I think that the better the players that Eddie Howe gets, the more attacking that Newcastle gets. So, for instance, at this stage I did a halfway season review. After 19 games, Newcastle this year have scored 4 more goals compared to last year. And our conversion rate, so shots on goal, the amount of goals that we convert, is one of the highest in the league. So that tells me going forward, Newcastle aren't too bad. They bought Gordon, they bought Barnes, they bought Isak, and all those players. So it lets me know as the players evolve, so does Eddie Howe's ability going forward evolve with it too. The only thing I would add, and I'm conscious that وليد has to translate for me, people have to remember that one of the players that we really, really wanted to get in the summer transfer window was James Maddison. A really good number 10. And I think if we had James Maddison, we'd have 2 sitting number 6s protecting our half, and James Maddison would be free roaming. And everyone can see what James Maddison does for Tottenham. He is their creative heartbeat, as he would have been for us.
Szoboszlai as well.
And exactly, and Szoboszlai as well. So you can see where Eddie Howe is thinking, but he needs those players to be able to do that.
طبعا بالعكس هو يعني يشوف انه عنده افكار حلوه واختياراته حلوه للاعبين، لكن في بعض اللاعبين الاساسيين لو جو كان سووا فارق. يعني شفنا اهتمام نيوكاسل بماديسون، شوف ايش قاعد يسوي في توتنهام، سوبوسلاي ايش قاعد يسوي في ليفربول، هذه كلها اسماء كان نيوكاسل يبغاها لكن ما حصل عليها. يعني اضطر هو ياخذ اسماء يعني ما كانت من الخيار الاول ولا الخيار الثاني، الخيار الثالث والرابع، وما زال يصنع فرص قويه ويسجل وفازنا على فرق كبيره. لكن الموضوع الارهاق وعناصر محدوده هو اللي اثر على نتائج الفريق. طيب احنا عندنا مشكله، الوقت قصير وفي كثير من الاسئله، فانا بحرص الاسئله اللي احنا قلناها او تكلمنا عنها نعديها. Okay, quickly if you can, Philip, what Miggy need to improve his play?
Look,
See,
oh my word. Okay, I'll have to rethink about who goes into the midfield, but I think Miggy probably needs a lot. He needs to use his right foot a little bit more and cross the ball into the ball. Always. But look, at the same time, I'm very conscious of, I guess this analogy that you can use is that we can't ask a fish to walk on land. And look, I know that we would want, for instance, Miggy to score more goals and to, cross the ball and to, have a little bit more going past players. But it's not who Miggy is. He's got a lot of energy. He presses well. He forces people into mistakes. He keeps the line and he defends well. And that is who Miggy is. And that's the best we're going to get out of him. And he's been a great servant. I don't think there's any more that we can do to get him to improve.
if we scored first, what we should change in our playing system?
Against Man City?
Maybe I think you mean Manchester City, yeah.
Man City, or for instance, I know that recently, for instance, against AC Milan, even against Nottingham Forest, all those games we scored first and we continued pressing high. We continued to try to barrage those teams, and then we got caught on the counter press. Look, I think, as I said before, I think the main reason we lost those games, AC Milan and Nottingham Forest, very similarly, is because we just didn't have the intensity, we didn't have the energy to track back and to be able to hold our lines between midfield and defense, which is the key part of our play. Usually we're very, very good at that. You saw that against Sunderland, and I know Sunderland are a championship team, but you've seen that against other teams as well. And so if the answer isn't we score first and we defend, the answer is that we score first, and the better answer is we score first. If we score first, we learn to hold the ball and have a better possession in our play in order to control the play more. And sometimes you need players to do that. Bruno is one of the few players who can help us to hold the ball. Hence why you got Calvin Phillips coming in, who's also very good on the ball. So it's just better control, better possession on the ball.
Tomorrow game, Philip, what do we expect? Now, I believe Eddie Howe understands Guardiola very well.
Yes.
Also, Pep Guardiola as well. He's understand Eddie Howe. So, so no surprises anymore.
No.
And so, what do you expect really tomorrow?
You know what you said is absolutely brilliant. They know each other now. There's no, it's not the same as, when you meet your future wife for the first time, you start asking, what's your name? What's your favorite?
How she get angry? Why she get angry?
Why you get angry? You know now. The conversation gets deep. So if anything, you are yourself, she is herself. Guardiola will be himself, Eddie Howe will be himself. And I think you'd see, I think regardless of the result, you're going to see the same Newcastle. You're going to see the Newcastle from before 8-9 games ago. You're going to see the same performance against whether we played Villa, whether we played PSG, whether we played any team. You're probably going to see a front pressing, attacking, energy team, physical team as best as they can. Man City are Man City. You just have to remember that. They can take. They've been pressed they get pressed every game. They're used to it. They'll keep the ball, and sometimes they'll have us in our own half. The good thing and better thing, Man City's game. I don't know if you've heard the phrase "styles make fights." Why, for instance, we suffered so much against Liverpool is because they can do short passes, but they can do long passes very quickly, and they stretch the play. And when you're tired and you can't get back and you haven't got the players of pace at the back, you suffer a lot. Man City aren't like that. They like a slow build-up. They like to keep hold of the ball. And so that gives Newcastle time after if an attack has broken down, it gives Newcastle time to get back and to defend. So you'll see that. But again, Man City are Man City, and they have quality. And I think De Bruyne will be on the bench, Erling Haaland will be on the bench. And if Guardiola needs to, he'll call upon those players. I'll only ask, keep a lookout for Phil Foden. Philip Foden has been having an incredible season, really good. He's got more goals, more goal contribution than Isak. And so he's been playing very, very well. He's going to be key to what they do. He's going to be key to how they play. And so do look out for him and how Newcastle handle him. Luckily, we've got Botman, who's a proactive defender who'll go into the tackle. But Phil Foden is going to be very key to what happens to Man City in the final third.
Thank you very much, Philip. We really enjoyed this tactic show with you. I wish if it can be stand longer.
Yes.
But unfortunately I can't.
Next time.
Quickly, what's your expectation, the result tomorrow?
2-1 Newcastle.
Brilliant. So 2-1. I expect a draw.
Yeah.
because they know each other.
Wow, absolutely.
طبعا نشكر طبعا فيليب المحلل التكتيكي، طبعا عايش في لندن هو الآن، عنده قناة جميلة تقريبا لسه تو مفتتحها في اليوتيوب، لكنه يعني يهوى ويعشق التحليل والتكتيك من فترة طويلة. فاللي حاب يتابع التكتيك يشترك في القناة، يكتب في اليوتيوب تون تاكتكس تي في، موجود برضو في تويتر. عنده كثير شرحات، يعني شرح كثير جميل عن المباريات والتكتيكس، وانا صراحه استفدت منه كثير، خصوصا برضو في هذه الحلقه. thank you for watching. نشكر لكم المتابعه. and thank you. It was lovely evening with you.
You too, sir. Great chat. Great people. Respect to everyone. Thank you.
much appreciated. شكرا لكم للمتابعه وتصبحون